Hi class, how's it going today? Mr. Dubois. We're going to show you today how to cut this stool out on the CNC machine using mastercam. We'll be using mastercam for SolidWorks, and I'll show you how we're going to do this. Alright, first thing you want to do is make sure that your assembly is going to go together well. Obviously, we'll bring all of our pieces into an assembly and double check everything. Make sure there's no overlaps anywhere, anything's too tight. This is probably going to be tight in this area here, but wood should compress to fit into these slots. So it'll be a nice tight stool and it'll work out well for us. We can switch to hidden view just to double check everything, and everything looks like it lines up pretty well. Alright, so once you assemble whatever object you want to cut, go ahead and minimize that. And you're going to want to start a new assembly. I've already started a new assembly here and just placed the items flat on a assembly so that we can then cut out all the pieces at the same time. Alright, obviously we're going to want to nest these as tight as we can with allowing space for our bit to get in between the parts, and we want them flat so that we can cut it out of, a piece of plywood or something like that. Alright, first step. Once you have your items placed into the assembly, make sure that we're in our mastercam tab. Go to the view manager, and we're going to move our UCS icon up. We always want to zero our machine to the top of the material, and currently our XYZ axis is at the bottom level. So we're going to want to move that up, and this is how we do this. We go to View Manager. Alright, we are currently looking at it in the top view. That's our cut view. Alright, and if you're nervous about if you're going to be selecting the right view to cut in, go back to the main screen here and just go to the top view and see what view that is. Alright, so for the machine is going to look like this. We have our X and our Y, and our Z is up. So we can see that that's clearly the right view that we want to cut in. So we're going to go to View Manager and make sure that this is on the mastercam top view. If it needs to be changed, you can select a different view and then just change our UCS to a different view. But we don't need to do that in this case because I did it from the top view originally. What we do need to do, however, is go down to our origin and bring that up the 3/4 of an inch so that when we Z out our tool, it's at the top of our material. So we're going to change this to 0.75. You can do that by typing it in. You also can do that if you have a corner to select. You can click on the arrow tool and actually select a corner. It's kind of tough right now because I don't have a corner to select, so I went and did it the other way. We're just going to type in 0.75 here. So go ahead and hit the check mark at this point. That will move our UCS icon up to the, well, should have moved our icon up to the top. I'm going to double check, see if I did that. Oh, 0.75. And hit the check mark. Alright, there we go. So it worked that time. So we move it up to the top, and now we can start doing our cut. How to start our cut is we're going to do the same thing as we did in Visual Mill, except we're going to go to 2D Toolpaths and click Contour Toolpaths. Okay? Once we do that, we need to select edges in which we want to contour around. Alright? A quick way of doing that is just simply selecting the top surfaces. And if we look at the chains, it should make several chains. One to go around each object, and then 4 to go inside here. So that's where we get the 7. So we can look at the chains and identify that we're going to have the correct amount of cuts. Hit the check mark. After hitting the check mark, a NC name is going to come up. This is, what it's going to call our NC file, and we can leave it as assembly 2, or we can change it to, stool assembly. It doesn't matter. For right now, we'll leave it default. All right. It automatically brings us into a window where we're going to go through all of our parameters for our cut. It's going to select some of them automatically for us, and we won't need to do all the tabs. There's quite a few on here. We won't need to mess with all of these, and we won't need to touch anything down here for this particular project. Leave it on contour cut. We're going to switch over to our tool that we need to use. First thing I want to look at is our tool diameter is going to be 1/2 inch. For this cut, I want to use a 1/4 inch cutting bit, flat end mill. So I'm going to go to select from the tool library. And right now I have already filtered all the other bits out. Originally, when you open your document here, it's going to look something like this. When you guys open it, it's going to have a bajillion things in here. What you're going to do is filter out a lot of these things so you don't have a lot of tools to choose from. So I go to filter, I uncheck most of them by clicking none. Actually, I uncheck all of them by clicking none. Then I'm going to just select the flat end mills, and I'm going to make them equal to 1/4 inch. That way it only shows me what mastercam has to offer in the 1/4 inch flat end mill. And there's only one in this case. So I hit the check mark, and that would allow me to only select that, and it works. 1/4 inch tool diameter. Tool number 235, I oftentimes like to change this to 1. All right. Our feed rate down here, we can skip down here. Typical of the machine that we had done with Visual Mill, 140 is a good feed rate, plunge rate's about 40, and our retract rate is 40. We don't need to worry about spindle speed because we have a manual spindle in there, so that's not going to be controlling anything, and we can forget about the rest of this stuff. Okay, so this is all set. Let's go over to, we don't have a holder on our particular machine. We'll go to cut parameters. This is just saying that our bit is going to be cutting to the right side of the 1/4 inch end mill, and the edge of the material is going to be to the right, the bit's going to be to the left. So we can go past that. We can go to depth cuts. That's going to allow us to, instead of doing a 1/2 inch each time or the full 3/4, I have a 3/4 inch piece of material. I can take this down 1/4 inch at a time. All right, and I obviously had to click the check here in order for this to happen. Lead in, lead out. Be careful with this because this could mess up, especially an inside cut. We don't need this in this particular case. I like to deselect this. All right, we don't need to break through. We actually are okay with just going exactly through, and we're actually going to skip down to tabs. All right, this is the same thing as bridges and Visual Mill. We're going to select this and make this happen. All right. In this particular case, we're going to be putting 4 tabs per piece. All right. That actually will include some of the surface on the inside of those pocket cuts, but it's okay. We can always take those out later. It'll keep the pieces from flying across the room. All right. And you can look at the size of the tabs, that sort of thing. We're going to skip past this and go down to linking parameters. And right now, the top of our stock is a weird setting, so we want to change that. We can either change this by typing in something, or we can actually click on this button here, and we can select the top of the stock to be right here, and then hit the check mark. That tells us that the top of the stock is 0.134. It should be 0, but because this is an assembly, we could be floating somewhere in space, but our UCS icon's okay. And then for our depth, we're going to click the bottom of this. All right, hit the check mark. So we're going down to 0.75. All right, we'll see if this all works. Hit the check mark once we're done with the linking parameters. And what we're going to notice is we see some cuts, but we don't see others. So obviously something weird has happened. Let's go ahead and make this see-through by going up to here and going down to wireframe. And we can see that our cuts are going to the inside of our lines because they're going to the left side of the edge. They're probably going this direction. There's a couple ways to fix this. I personally like to do it one particular way. It seems very easy. We go to our chains, and what we can do is we can actually reverse the direction that the bit goes around, and that will, instead of if it's going counterclockwise and the bit is on the right side or the left side of the line, if we go counterclockwise, it'll switch that. So we go to geometry, and this oftentimes will slow your computer down. But once it opens up, what we're going to do is we're going to go through our chains, and it's probably the first chain that we need to do for this one here. And an icon's going to pop up, and it's going green arrow this way, and our bit is going to the inside. All right, we want it to go to the outside. So we can do it a couple ways. we can switch the way that the bit is, what side the bit of the is on the line, or we can just switch the direction that it's cutting. I usually just switch the direction, and that's going to have the arrow going this way to the right, and it'll have the bit to the outside. Let's try to find the last chain, which is going to be cutting out this stool leg over here, and see how the bit is going to the inside. That's the small arrow. We're going to flip the direction by hitting this arrow over here, and it should obviously make it so the bit's to the outside. It's kind of hard to tell where the location of this is, but you'll figure it out. Hit the check mark, and right now we have a dirty toolpath. That's why we have the X here. We need to regenerate it. So make sure that this is selected. You can do that by going up to here, select all operations, and then you have to go to here and regenerate all selected operations. Once that regenerates, we should have all the correct cuts, and we can zoom in a little bit and make sure that this looks correct. We have our cuts on the outside. We do a 1/4 inch down each time, and we are ready to go. What we need to do now is double check and make sure that we are going to post to the correct machine, which I hope this did it correctly. We can simulate our item by clicking on this button right here and playing through, and I'm going to have to move my box stock up a little bit for it to actually cut into it, which this is how you do that. Okay, to see if our cut is going to work, what we need to do is we need to make a piece of stock to make sure that it's cutting out in the right position. I didn't do that yet, that's why it didn't come out. So we have to hit the plus sign right next to properties, and we need to go to stock setup. Let's make a piece of 1/2 inch plywood, so 48 inches by 48 inches, 3/4 thick, and I want to make sure that my origin isn't just located, my origin is probably down here somewhere with the assembly, but I want it to this origin here. So what I can do is I can actually click on this, and let's just set up the piece of plywood from right about here. It'll work. Hit the check mark and hit the check mark from here. All right. So we can see our piece of plywood. We can see how it's going to cut. A little off, but we'll deal with it. And we can also see that our item is going to fit inside a 1/2 sheet of plywood. We can probably cut out another one. So we can probably do 2 stools out of a 1/2 sheet of plywood. So let's go ahead and go to this button right here. This is the Verify Selected Operations. What this is really your Simulate button. So click on that, go ahead and hit the play, and we can see exactly how it's going to cut it out. And it looks like it's going to work. We can see where our tabs are located. All right, we have a kind of a corner tab in each one on the inside. That's okay. We can see that our bit's going to fit in between all the pieces, not going to double over on anything. So we verified it. Looks good. At this point in time, what we're going to do is we're simply going to put our thumb drive into the computer, and we're going to post how we normally post. Instead of right-clicking like we do in Visual Mill, what we do, I just plugged in the thumb drive. That's why this popped up. What we're going to do is we're going to click the G1 button. All right, and at this point in time, we need to make sure that this says, and this should say Win CNC, and it doesn't, so we're going to have to go back and fix that.